Okay. All right, we're good. All right. Please go ahead, Jacqueline, and let us know what happened in Westerville.
Good news. Our RTRI policy was rescinded. So as many of you know, we are the first district that once LifeWise has gotten in the district, or any RTRI program has gotten in the district, that we have removed, been able to get that policy rescinded. We were very fortunate for various different circumstances. Number one, we have a very progressive board. We did not have a complete board members that were on the board when LifeWise kind of came in. LifeWise was the only one in our district. So our global focus, and I have been very strict. We've been very strict on this in our group, is our focus is not LifeWise. Our focus is RTRI, because the truth is LifeWise could disband and a new program could come in tomorrow. So, it's not about getting LifeWise out of the school districts. It's about changing the RTRI policies. And so that's kind of was very much our effort. That was very much our language, even with the board. We are not anti-LifeWise, we are anti-RTRI. And any program that would come out to disrupt the school day and take children out en masse. So that is kind of where we came from. We have a progressive board. We ended up with the best ragtag bunch of misfit parents that anybody's ever seen. We had, some really great, powerful speakers, and we were able to be successful.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing that news. And we'll just have you here as long as you can. And we have some questions for you in the future.
Well, I was going to say, does anyone have questions for me now, in case I get pulled out?
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
Now, the RTRI wasn't that what was approved by the Supreme Court?
No, so everyone has to realize that the Clausen ruling was that the RTRI policy may be initiated. So, it is still voluntary. I know now in some states like Indiana, they have passed a law stating that it is required. Ohio does not yet have that law. The Clausen ruling and Ohio current revised code states that release time religious instruction policy may be implemented, which means it also may be removed under Ohio law, which is how other districts like Gahanna and other districts have gotten to prevent LifeWise and others coming into the district by revoking their RTRI policy or choosing not to initiate one. Our greater concern is there are two House bills, House Bill 445, and there is a Senate bill that has been introduced. House Bill 445 is the one that has at least gone to testimony. That ruling, it has had proponent testimony. It has not yet been called for opponent testimony, and it has been stalled on that motion. The chair has not opted at this time to call for testimony. I suspect that LifeWise will be putting the screws to the committee, especially now with what we've achieved in Westerville. We have already been at the State House meeting with representatives. Our team has, and so we're kind of working that way. And we're just trying to build our deck of people who are willing to go and be speakers for opposition testimony.
Thank you. We have a hand raised from an iPhone, but I don't know who that is. Can you identify yourself, please? I see a hand raised, but it's an iPhone and I can't tell who it is.
Also have to unmute.
Yeah, they have to unmute.
Okay,
Sorry,
well,
it's Sue Miller. I put my,
hi, Sue.
I said I'm the other, iPhone.
okay.
I
problem.
put that in the chat. I'm not sure. I need to fix that because that's happening on all my Zooms. So sorry.
Okay.
And it's Sue Miller up Arlington.
Yes, you want to, I think you had your hand raised for a question, or is that just come up?
I did. So with regard to Westerville, I guess my question is it seems with this, House bill and Senate bill looming, that the logical next step is to put a new policy into place that would, my understanding, what has to happen now is to create policy or to reclassify the non-core courses and recess, and I know this is going to be hard, but as either core curriculum or graded or evaluated on some
So-
level?
So that's something that can't happen. So in our discussions with people, you know, we're very lucky in our group. We have some people with great experience and breadth in different walks of life. So in Westerville, we have already declared all courses to be core courses, including art, gym, library, those kinds of things were already declared as part of the core curriculum for Westerville, which is why in our district, they only were allowed to take them at lunch and at recess. However, so that does help, and that would be an extra security plan for any other district to at least get those declared. However, you cannot grade recess or lunch. So lunch and recess, there is no way to make those core requirements and core classes. But that also, from my understanding with talking to someone who has school policy experience, that's also a protected time for the schools to do things that they need to do in those times without removing to take children out from core classes. Like if they have to meet with the school psychologist or other things that may need to happen through the day, it's a way for them to do it without the students missing formal class time. But you know, you can't grade someone on how well they go out and play with others on the playground. And so they, LifeWise or any other group would still have that window of time. But it is even before the law change, getting school boards to protect all courses as core courses. And now
Okay,
if you
so
can get
the-
them to separate recess and lunch, then you really throw a wrench into their plans. But most schools can't do that because that was one of our suggestions of can we separate recess and lunch and cut down the time? But they're like, we can't for the logistical flow of a day, especially when you've got young kids.
Okay, so that really hammers home the point that the approach in individual school districts is going to be different. Because in Upper Arlington, they take them during something called explorations. So we're going to probably push for explorations to be
A core class.
evaluated.
And yeah,
Okay,
and that
yep.
exploration, you
Okay.
could try to make it deem a core class, depending upon how they write the class plan for exploration. So that's kind of, you know, what they define that as will dictate how that gets used. So you know, the next big push, of course, is going to be hoping to get people ready to do opponent testimony and write their legislatures, because as very much evidenced by the Westerville meetings, we are outgunned and outmanned. We were definitely absolutely in the minority, and they have the ability to mobilize. They have all the, you know, buzzwords that they can use of, you know, spiritual warfare, all the things. And LifeWise has a big financial budget to use against all of us in helping this go through. So that's kind of where our next steps and our next focus is going to be at the legislative level, because I'm going to really probably sob horrifically if all my hard work goes down the drain.
That's a biggie. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you can stick around for a while and then we could go back and forth.
Yeah.
I'd like to go ahead and give Zach a chance. Now he's got his screen share up. And I would like to go ahead and read his bio. He's joining us really from Fort Wayne, Indiana. He is a co-founder of Parents Against LifeWires. He's a single father and a renounced Mormon who has been sounding the alarm about LifeWise Academy since 2021. And that time, the program was first brought to his attention by his daughter's second grade teacher. He learned about the program during a Defiance City Schools open house. This is in Defiance, Ohio. After having found no support and almost zero information about the program in 2021, he's been dedicated to spreading awareness and information about the dangers, complications, and legal issues related to LifeWise Academy. Zachary believes that allowing this organization to proselytize during using the precious and limited education time in our public schools is something everyone should be concerned about. So we're just going to have Zachary take a little time to tell us about his personal story with LifeWise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll skip ahead here. I wasn't sure how familiar everybody was with LifeWise or RTRI in general, so let me skip ahead here to just kind of my personal experience at Defiance. This, I don't know if you guys can see it or not. This was the handout that I was given at the open house, which you can see LifeWise is listed as the special. Is it visible or not? Can you guys see it or no?
If we look really closely, yeah.
Okay, I won't mess with this then. It's not
That's
worth
okay.
it.
Don't worry. Don't worry about it.
It's okay.
But yeah, I mean, I went to the open house and they sent home a packet of information as well as the class schedule listing LifeWise as the special. They sent home 2 different permission slips after I didn't fill out the first one. And I approached the teacher about it and asked, what are the kids doing that aren't going to LifeWise since there's no class listed for my child on Tuesday? What is she actually doing? And I went back and forth with a bunch of emails and they kept saying that she was in a study hall. An uninstructed study hall at that. So I contacted the Freedom from Religion Foundation and they sent a letter to the school stating everything that I had told them, sending them the paperwork that I had given them. But the thing is, they didn't send the whole page here. They only cropped out this little bit that was the schedule itself. So Defiance's lawyers responded by saying, this isn't real proof. This doesn't show us that it came from the school. It doesn't show us that it came from the class. And they said all of my claims were unfounded, even though I have stacks of evidence. I mean, I just have so many different things between communications with the school and handouts, and even the study hall work that my daughter was given was like copy words or write words that rhyme is what it was. Like they gave her a paper that said cat and boy and just told her to write words that rhymed. She was sent to the gym while other kids were having gym. They were called LifeWise leftovers in internal emails. So yeah, the Freedom from Religion Foundation really kind of dropped the ball. They didn't do anything after Defiance said all these claims are unfounded. They just left it be. So fast forward to next year, I got in touch with Danielle, who's in the chat, I believe. She was also local to me, and we started talking about it. And I tried to approach it from a different angle. We got a hold of the ACLU to see what they could do about it. And I tried to focus on the fact that Defiance was claiming that they were teaching character education to our children, even though all of the emails said they were in study hall. They sent us this, it's called the AIM Buddy Project, and it's based on Arthur videos. You know, the PBS show Arthur? Basically, it was like a work group. Like it was supposed to be big kids working with little kids, watching these videos, doing different like games and interactive activities with instruction from the teacher. Like this is what the roadmap, it was called, was. Like that's the curriculum of this AIM project. But all they were doing was making the kids watch the videos. Like, and I've got emails from the principal who says, yeah, no, there's no big kids and little kids. We don't mix classes. Yeah, it was just kind of crazy how little they cared and how much little effort they were making for the kids who didn't go to LifeWise. But again, they were boasting like an 85% participation rate. So it was just my daughter and a couple other kids from her class. I mean, it was like 2 or 3 kids in her class that weren't going to LifeWise. So yeah, I mean, from then on, I really just kind of made it my mission to let everybody know, that this was coming, because it was real apparent to me how this was going to spread. I mean, there was no information about LifeWise back then. They had a real basic web page. Nobody knew about it. They were just in a handful of schools. And I just got on Reddit, started shouting into the abyss, and fast forward to earlier this year, Molly got a hold of me and asked me to help run the Parents Against LifeWise group, and it just kind of took off from there.
And you want to tell us a little bit about how many people you have in the Parents Against LifeWise Facebook group now?
Yeah, I think we're at 6,500. So it's growing a lot. And it's really amazing because, like I said, when I started, yelling about this on Reddit, nobody was listening. Nobody was paying attention. Nobody cared. And we're finally to the point where people are seeing it. All they had to do was look. And I guess that's kind of what the group's goal is just getting this information out there, making people aware that this is going on and it's coming to their school, because LifeWise thrives working behind closed doors. I mean, we have so many different emails and different testimonies of them talking to superintendents and board members, like behind closed doors, over coffee and things like that, making these agreements with no public knowledge that it's happening until after they're already in there.
Zach, can you talk about your lawsuit?
No, I
No,
cannot.
we cannot go there. We will deal with that separately. It's a pending lawsuit, so we can't do that. Sorry.
Can I
You
talk
can
about
talk
it?
about it. I can't. You can.
We're not going to talk about it in this session. Just don't want to risk any issues that might arise. So
Yeah.
we
Okay.
are going to do a follow-up. There is a GoFundMe to help with that, and we will provide information about that following the meeting. So if you just give your name, put your name in there and enter email address, then you'll get that afterwards. So we're just not going to talk about it in this. We don't want to do anything that will upset the apple cart here. Okay.
Okay, I especially just wanted to make sure the GoFundMe information got out to people who
Yes,
can submit
yes.
to their respective groups.
Yes, I've already got it, and it will be sent out to all the groups that are going to receive the video. So it's going to be done.
I mean, you can touch on the basics of it. I mean, that's fine. If you or Natalie want to step in and just kind of give the basic rundown about it, that's okay. I just can't personally speak on it.
Well, I think we sort of made a decision to just not go there right now
Yeah,
because
that's fine.
it's a safety concern for you and for the group. But we will provide the GoFundMe afterwards with an explanation of what's going on and as a follow-up. Karen Lee has her hand up.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to clarify. Thanks, Deb, and thank you, Zachary. It's really interesting. So LifeWise picks the kids up from school who are permissioned to be picked up, and they go. And the other kids who are leftovers, as you say, okay, they get somehow taken care of at the school, put somewhere in a more or less instructive setting. First of all, where does the funding for LifeWise come from? Do the parents pay for their kids to go to LifeWise? And secondly, what's the sweet spot for the schools that are talked into it? Do they see them being able to move their resources around, give their teachers a break, give them fewer hours teaching, or is it simply that in certain school districts, the superintendents and possibly the board are prone to taking the kids out of public school and giving them religious education?
I would love to answer the funding question or Zach, I can build on whatever you might.
Oh, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Natalie Hastings, and I'm with Honesty for Ohio Ed. And I encountered I'm just going to really quick, and then I'm going to answer that. I encountered LifeWise because I research extremism and how it's affecting public schools in Ohio. And so meeting with folks in different school districts about like what concerned them, LifeWise kept popping up. And so that's how I met Zach and a lot of the other folks, was via just starting this research. But the short answer is that a lot of the funding comes from Patriot Mobile, which is the Texas-based cellular company that says, don't give your money to, don't give your revenue to, woke America, give it to Christian organizations. And Glenn Story, who's the Patriot Mobile CEO, who, in my opinion, is extremely involved in white Christian nationalism and Project 2025, they have provided a lot of the funding and a lot of the platforming for LifeWise, because LifeWise started, and anyone, there's a little more to it, but LifeWise started, as this like small program that the founder, Joel Penton, started in Van Wert, where he was from, and he took that program and then he started trying to perfect it in places like Defiance, where Zach and Danielle are, and Hilliard. They came in Hilliard right when the same meeting where they were people were upset about pronoun tags and safety. Oh, Sarah's on here. So that the same meeting where they were upset about pronouns basically, and saying you're a safe space, was when LifeWise came in. And the money at the local level is mostly having to be raised locally, but then there's also this national, like corporate type machine. And I will send you the graphic where that shows all their connections to Project 2025. But this is just like one more cut at the apple of how to dismantle public ed. And Glenn Story, Patriot Mobile CEO, is even on the record saying, you know, this, we're coming at this issue from all sides. We're doing universal vouchers. We're, you know, putting the 10 Commandments in schools. And we even have this program called LifeWise Academy, where we're gonna, you know, get the Bible into public schools by taking kids out. So so they're well funded. Lindsay Automotive is also another source on the Ohio side.
I think Sue Miller has her hand up again.
Yes, I just want to let everybody know that I
Craig
dropped the link to the GoFundMe for Zach's legal fund in the chat. I also dropped the link to the Parents Against LifeWise Facebook page in the chat. Last I looked, we're getting closer to 6,800 members there. That's where you're going to be able to stay current on everything. We have people in that group. Yesterday, we had someone join us from Oregon, Texas, Kentucky, North Carolina. It's growing really fast. LifeWise is in over 20 states now and over, I believe, over 200 school districts in Ohio now. So they've got quite a bit of momentum, but guess what? Thanks to Westerville, so do we.
Thank you very much.
If I can
Showalter.
elaborate on what Natalie was saying about the
Sure.
funding,
Sure.
I think when she's talking about like Patriot Mobile, most of that kind of goes to the top level because they still make all of the local organizations raise their own startup cost as well. Like they pull a lot of money from the local community as well with the they give it from the churches or the, you know, some business owners in the community will often donate large chunks. But they pull quite a bit from the local community as well as all of the big, you know, national organizations that are connected to Project 2025. There's a bunch of them that sponsor and help fund them, but they also take a lot from local and it all just gets funneled up. They pull the money directly out of the local communities.
Wow.
They also get a lot of grants.
Yep.
They're able to get education grants and grants from religious organizations. And that's another way that they inflate their bank account.
Okay, thank you, Diane or Danielle. We have another question that Craig Showalter had his hand up. Craig?
Let me introduce myself. I'm new to this group and interested to know about the organization and the success you're having. I'm working in Granville, Ohio, in a church that is concerned a little bit about what might happen in this community if LifeWise gets more of a hold here. But I'm also a pastor in another church where LifeWise is established and is starting. And unfortunately, I'm part of the clergy group that brought it here, brought it to the community, which means I'm inside a little bit of this organization. And unfortunately, my own members, church, are excited that we might be able to expand the Christian message into the community through this means. So it gives me the opportunity to sit in some of this planning, some of the organization, meet the director, quiz some of the specifics. So yes, it's asking for churches to support, it's asking for local businesses to support, and it's supposedly with the appeal that this money is going to the local program so that the local students will get this benefit. And I am intrigued and not surprised at how strong a national organization this has become and how it's funded. So thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate that. I think we had another couple of hands up, but if you had a question, okay, Patty.
I wanted to ask, my friend has had grandchildren or in the district where they had LifeWise, And the tactics, I wanted to ask about the tactics, because she said that her grandchild, of course, like you all have said, was one of the few that didn't opt to have LifeWise, but the tactics they were using is they'd come back with treats and say they just had a party. And then they also would say to another student, you're going to hell if you don't believe in God and go here. Is that tactic used? Is that a familiar one, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And there's nothing that the principal or the school could talk to them and say, you can't pressure other students in this situation. I mean,
I can speak on some of Westerville. We have had reports of bullying. We've had a couple speakers who spoke to our board, one of which is an LGBTQIA family, whose daughter, of course, doesn't go because LifeWise is very anti LGBTQ. I don't know if you've ever looked at their FAQs for Craig. I don't know if you've looked at their frequently asked questions that teachers may get asked in their responses, up to and including if your parents are divorced, well, they sinned. Marriage is meant to be forever. Sorry if your dad was beating your mom every day and she finally left. If they repent, they'll be forgiven, those types of things. You know, the thing that I think is to realize with the bullying is I don't believe it's directed at LifeWise. However, first of all, like, and I gave this in my speech, you know, kids aren't taught to bully by us for the most part. They just do it innately. And when you see that separation, and that was one of my points, is you're sowing and seeing this deep separation between students. We go, you don't. We're told if you don't go, you go to hell. You know, teachers can somewhat address this, you know, but I do have a friend who was accused of telling a student to go to LifeWise when literally the kid asked mom, well, I want to go. And she's like, well, you have to ask your parents. I'm sorry, you have to go ask your parents. And then the kid came home and said, oh, my mom, you know, Miss so-and-so told me to ask you to go to LifeWise, realizing that the group they're dealing with are kindergarten through 6th grade is their primary, you know, group here. And so any division they see, your skin color is different, your hair is different, you dress different, your religion's different, is innately causing that division. I mean, I know some LifeWise teachers. My sister-in-law is my sister's father-in-law is a LifeWise teacher. And I know he's a good person and does not teach to that. However, when you showed kids divisions, they're automatically going to start in class and group themselves.
and do they give like candy and treats or something and say there was a party? Because
well, in some programs they do. They get prizes for memorizing your Bible verse.
Okay.
Maybe they earn candy, stuff like that.
Okay.
Some programs, our program last year sent kids with flyers to invite and bring your friends. Other ones have said, oh, if you recruit 90 people, this is a video that I've spoken to. If you recruit 90 students, we'll give you an ice cream party. You know, if you told me right now, Jacqueline, if you let me punch you in the face as hard as I can, I'll give you $1 million. I'll be like, okay, go for it. That's how my child feels about an ice cream party. Like, if I could join this group and go to an ice cream party, like, let's do this, mom. So they're using those bribery and manipulation tactics, which sometimes are innocent, you know, however.
No, they're not innocent. They're definitely not innocent. They're intentional. They know exactly what they're doing. It's also like she mentioned the flyers and the invitations, and you ask what can be done about that. The schools do have the legal authority to limit that to lunch and recess. The Supreme Court has upheld that they can't tell students not to discuss religion or not to invite their friends to church or to LifeWise, but the schools do have the authority to limit when they do that to just lunch and recess, so it's not disrupting class time. And that's not something that, you know, everybody's aware of, but it's something that they can do.
So if these young students are pressuring and saying, oh, you're going to go to hell, they only can do that during recess? I mean, how would the teacher know they're saying to another kid? I mean,
right. I mean, sure, in theory, you have to have somebody paying attention and watching, but I mean, when they're handing out actual invitations, that's pretty apparent, you know.
okay.
And again, it has to be enforced. Like they have to make it the policy and they have to make it the rule to limit it to that time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you,
And I don't-
Patty.
I'm gonna have to jump off here to get back to work. Did anybody have any more questions for me in regards to Westerville? Anything we did? Any questions for me at this time?
It's like Jim Collier has a question.
I just want to tell you how proud I am of your board and the people that spoke against LifeWise were eloquent, they were logical, they were polite. Your board showed a lot of professionalism and a lot of class and a lot of patience. And for anyone who wasn't there to witness, a lot of these people are just horrible. And I'm hoping that we can replicate this, but I just want to applaud the Westerville School Board and the community for what you did. And I hope it spreads.
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you.
Okay, Sue Miller, I think that's you. You have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm working on getting the transcript of some of the more powerful testimonies that were given, as well as the transcript of the school board president's speech before they voted as to why she was voting yes to rescind the policy. These are words that can be used, you know, in other districts to get their boards to see the very slippery slope they are on with allowing this these kids to be picked up and bussed off school property, because virtually any organization has a right to do that, any religious organization for sure. So I think it's super important for districts that do not have LifeWise to get in front of this, and for those that do to know what's coming down the pike. In my opinion, LifeWise is setting themselves up to benefit from the windfall of money that's coming from the school voucher expansion and the attempts to privatize public education, not just in Ohio, but across the country. So I will be putting those testimonies and that's the Westerville School Board President's speech on our Parents Against LifeWise Facebook page, hopefully within the next couple days.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate it. Sarah has her hand up.
Yeah.
Jacqueline, and I texted these to you. I don't know if you want to answer them later in a message, but I know you put in a lot of front work. Did you guys strategize who was going to talk about what, who was going to email what? Like, you got this topic.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, my hand's up. I don't know how it went up. I don't know how to get it down. We did, and I can meet and jump up. I know I'm meeting with Natalie tomorrow.
Cool.
We really did. I was the speaker coordinator. I have spoken at every board meeting about this. We did have a lot of coordination. We do have an active smaller chat group for the school board meetings and speakers. We do have a lot of those things in place. So we were trying to be very deliberate. We were trying to make sure we weren't repeating the same message. Everyone had different talking points. The biggest advice I can give to anyone, which was really advice we were given, which helped us, and it's truly also what I believe is, again, you do not attack LifeWise. You attack the RTRI policy because you don't want to get dinged with being anti-Christian, anti-religion, those kinds of labels. But LifeWise, everything they throw at us is anti-Christianity. And so, you know, my thing is really to focus on getting RTRI out, because the next LifeWise, or if you label it LifeWise, that argument may not apply to the next group that comes in. And there's multiple other groups that are out there. And LifeWise isn't the only player in town. They're just currently the strongest. So that's my caution. I know that was some advice I was given from someone who was on a school board for many, 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 many years. And she's like, do not make this about the one organization. Make this about the policy. She goes, you need to attack through policy because that is what the board can address and speak to. And the board has to be nonpartisan. They have to be non-biased. They can only speak to and address policy.
Right. Thank you very much. Is that all you have, Sarah? Because I'm going to go to Ann if you're done. Okay. Ann Isaacs.
Yeah, I live in Westerville, and I was talking with someone who had been at the board meeting, and her comment was this decision was 10 years in the making. And her reasoning behind that is we've been vetting and campaigning for Westerville school board members for 10 years now. And Westerville was able to do this in part because they had a progressive school board, and it just shows the importance of being involved at the school board level, even when an election.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Yeah, and issue 1 is going to be very important for everyone in Ohio. Voting yes on issue 1, because that is the anti-gerrymandering, which is going to help us in the House and Senate and fight these bills as they come up. You know, because like I said, if this House bill passes, if this goes to DeWine, he will sign it. He doesn't care either way. He's going to sign it to save face. We all know him, and you know, all this work will be undone. So it is really pushing your candidates for school board. You know, we were very lucky. I worked very hard to get a couple, you know, on the campaigns. I'm not known directly to any school board member, so no one can come and take that and be like, oh, they did this because nope, they don't know who I am. I just handed out leaflets for a third party. But really our group is proof of what a small group of, you know, 2 parents on Facebook made a group, joined by a couple more parents, joined by a couple more, and we ended up lucky. But it took a lot of work. There was a lot of coordination, a lot of speaking, working. I worked on speeches, helped edit other people's speeches, streamlining messages, those types of things.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to mention that we do have a very large Ohio State House number of bills that I send out every week. Now it's in an attachment because it was too big for my document. But a couple of the bills that we're following have to do with this. The 445 we've been concentrating on. So we are asking members of our group to make calls to legislators, and we do need to realize how important these incursions on the public school are, and they're multifaceted with a lot of different legislation that goes along with it. And so that your calls and your emails and your, you know, following up with legislators, even if they're likely to pass things anyway, we want to make sure that there's pushback and that there's awareness, because I think a lot of people suffer from the lack of awareness until it hits their doorstep, and by then it may be too late. And that applies to the voucher program that is going to be going to lawsuit on November 4th. Upper Arlington recently they were able to convince their board that it was in their best interest to sign on to the lawsuit, but there are many other school districts that haven't. So it's all the same thing, and it's always people that have to band together, usually in small groups at first, and then finally it gains momentum, as Zach explained, and it becomes stronger, and people realize the importance, but it takes a while. So I applaud everybody who does even just a little bit in their own community. As far as public schools and every other way, we have to be active members of the community. I'm going to go back to Zach. Oh, Patty.
I'm going to jump off, guys. It was great me talking to you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Patty had something else.
Just to Zach or whoever, I was wondering if for the time period for when they start, like if the kids have already started in LifeWise, like Westerville then said they wouldn't have the RTI, then do the kids like automatically stop? Is there a process before they have to have LifeWise out of the schools, as far as if they start at the beginning of school year?
Well, this was the first time we've seen somebody who had the program in there get rid of them. So
okay.
they said it was going to stop immediately. But I mean, the bigger picture is parents can still come pull their kids out. This organization can still come pull the kids out if they're listed as emergency contacts. The only thing is, it's about the absence. These kids are not marked as absent when they go. That's what the policy is. That's what the law is about. That's the whole kit and caboodle of the RTRI, is the absence. So any parent can still come pull their kid out. They're just going to be marked absent for that time.
And the other question was about the teachers union. Like, did you guys contact, is that something you can't do as far as telling the, you know, speaking to the teachers union about this, the causes, the harms of this, or?
Well, at the state level, we talk to both unions about this issue. Okay. And, you know, 611 districts in Ohio, not every district feels the same way about RTRI and about LifeWise. And that's why, like, I think the advice for this call for the folks who are in an urban area, this is absolutely 100% right on. It was executed perfectly in Westerville. In some places, where, you know, the church, maybe like the main local church and the school are very intertwined, it's a lot more complicated. Doesn't necessarily mean LifeWise is there, but, you know, I grew up in a small town on the other side of the Ohio, but similar vibe, like right across from Coal Grove, Lawrence County. And so essentially though, but to answer your question, sorry, there's so much on this topic. OEA has done interviews where they have come out against specifically the operations of LifeWise, because, and I totally hear the point on not being anti any particular religious denomination or faith type, but essentially LifeWise stands out in how it operates because they will essentially, you know, come in. It's like coming in with a Starbucks and not talking to the local coffee shop first, right? There are churches like what you, if anyone saw in Huron, what has gone on there, where all the mainline churches, you know, basically wrote the school and said, we want you to understand, we asked LifeWise to meet with us and like, they didn't want to. And when LifeWise decided to come in, they didn't reach out to any of the main churches because in a lot of places, LifeWise benefits from as few people knowing as possible. Then they get an interest list. And they say that you need, I don't know, 150 signatures, but there's no science to it really. And you don't have to live anywhere particular, but imagine you have a group with a national reach through, you know, they were a sponsor of the Moms for Liberty Summit in DC a couple months ago. So they have a national reach. And then you can pick a school district on their website, say you want to start a petition to support LifeWise in, you know, in Ironton schools. And then you can get most of those signatures from somewhere else. You do need a steering committee of locals, and they want it to be from a couple of churches. And essentially, it's a great organizing model. Y'all know about organizing, right? But they don't go to the school until they already have churches having invested like $1,500 at least. And community members that are like, I've put my heart and soul. I've done spaghetti dinners. I've talked to people. I've done this, you know, knocking on doors. And so then like if they get turned down, whether it's because they don't have a policy or whatever it might be, that you've got this group that's already like feeling persecuted, if you will, by being rejected. So that's why like in some places where LifeWise has come in and there is energy with the school board to limit the effects, but let's say just a handful of people, like in Berea, which is not rural, but Berea City Schools, a handful of people were using RTRI and not disrupting anything, like not in a mass, you know, just a few kids. And so they beefed up their policy as much as they could. With like restricting, you know, the time periods where it could, but they didn't feel from a legal perspective that they could withdraw the policy because of the few people that were using it. And yes, and to Anna is saying, this is again, something that it depends a little bit on the district. And I know there's like teachers and administrators probably in here that know more about this than me, but Southwestern, I know that's, you know, near Columbus, and that one sticks out because they have a lot of extremists on their board. They have Omar Tarizi, you know, offering legal advice. And there was never a discussion about it at a board. When the new board came in, they just like a notice went out from central office that religious excuses were going to count like dentist appointments and just be excused. So that's, you know, some of that is like central office discretion. So obviously that creates some problems, but, you know, that's where it comes back to also, organizing your school board candidates for 2025. So it's looked different in a lot of places. I mean, Zach's been fighting the good fight in Defiance and Danielle as well for 3 or 4 years now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've moved on from Defiance since they kicked me out of the
Oh,
school.
well, right,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that a lot of schools are scared. They don't want to tell LifeWise no, because LifeWise is going to sue them a whole lot faster than just an angry parent or two. There's nobody stepping up and suing the schools for us parents, even when there are clear-cut violations. There's nobody actually doing anything about these violations. And LifeWise will roll in there and sue the school or threaten them and intimidate them. I mean, they're scared to tell LifeWise no or work around them.
We have a few more hands up. I want to give everybody a chance. And I also did not read Natalie's bio yet, and I would like to get to that because we were trying to do Zach first and then Natalie, but we'll go with that in just a minute. I think Ann Isaacs has had her hand up for a little while. Ann, are you there?
I am, but it was from before. I'm just
Oh,
working on my
okay.
shoulder muscle.
Okay, then I think it's Sue Miller next and then Sarah.
Yes, I'm probably going to give you a really good segue into Natalie's portion, but I just want to tell everybody that we have to be very, very careful in working with our school boards and our superintendents to be giving them the facts, okay, the data, the facts about RTRI. We had a few people in Upper Arlington that heard about this and started firing off emails to our board with incorrect information about LifeWise, such as how can you allow people you don't know to take our kids off school property to places you don't know where they're taking them? None of that is true. So to maintain credibility for our effort, it's very important to just work from what we know to be true. And so again, this is probably a really good segue for Natalie to start talking about how Honesty has put together a toolkit to help communicate with your boards and superintendents.
Thanks, Sue. I'll go to Sarah and then we'll start with Natalie and I'll read her bio.
Well,
Sarah.
alas, I'm going to take us back to what Zach had just been talking about. I kind of lost it, but I did want to say in Hilliard voted it in. We got the records request and found that Lieutenant Governor Houston had called our school board president twice to tell her to pass this. And this is in 22. The state government. And Omar Tarazi was in Hilliard at the time, in Hilliard City Council, also putting pressure on this school board president, who I didn't cotton to her very much, but she was under so much pressure for this vote. I don't know if anybody could have withstood it.
Thank you.
But that's what they're up against.
Thank you.
We've got some records requests too, just to add to that, and then I'll stop. We've got records requests of LifeWise actually sending the schools the policy, saying this is what the policy is that you need to adopt, just straight out laying it out for them and telling them this is what you need to do. And that's crazy.
Thank you very much, Zach. I think Mac has his hand up and then I'll read Natalie's bio. Oh, I think you're muted, Mac. Still muted. Are you hitting the unmute button? Okay, it's not coming through. Okay, well, when we hear you, I'm going to go ahead and read her bio and you work with it and then we'll catch you. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. Natalie Hastings is a public school parent who began tracking the efforts of national extremism on public schools when her own district elected 4 new board members who promised to, quote, fight CRT, canceled an opt-in Racial Diversity Awareness Day, and passed a, quote, culture of kindness resolution to restrict teaching and discussions on race, gender, identity, and inclusion. She educates and activates local communities to protect the rights of every student through Honesty for Ohio Education, an alliance of 70+ nonprofit organizations, and its Honesty Teams Network, our partner in HEAL, Together Race Forward's Public School Strong initiative. Hastings also manages research for Ohioans Against Extremism, which is a new group. I just happen to have a shirt that shows you the logo. It's brand new. So that's Natalie's background. Many of you are familiar with Ohio for Honesty for Ohio Education, and we do count on their programs and information about some bills that help us to speak with our legislators. Let's try Mac again. Mac, can you say something? Oh, it's not coming through. I'm sorry. Maybe write your question in the chat and we'll have Jeannie speak it forward. Would that be okay? Okay, sounds good. All right. Natalie, we'll just, when we get Mac's question, we'll break in, but we'll have you go for your toolkit explanation. That'd be great. Thank you.
Forgot to unmute, classic. Hey everyone, thanks for your time. A lot has been covered. I just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about, in the Honesty Teams Network, we have a working group where we have been collaborating on research and advocacy around release time for religious instruction and specifically LifeWise. And several of them are here in the group. And the toolkit that we released in late August, which I will drop in the chat, or I can also put on share screen possibly here, offers some resources for how you might engage your community, how you might engage your school board, and then also engaging at the state level. And we are going to, just a little plug, we are continuing to help and folks in our working group for individual school districts. If you have questions, obviously, a lot of people in this room, Zach, Danielle, Anna, can help with those sort of rapid response and come alongside you if you are working on this issue in your local district. But for the rest of 2024, we are shifting some of our resources to focus on what we expect to be the fight at the State House when we come back from Election Day and head towards lame duck. And so the bill, I'm going to wait on the visual just because I want to just make sure, as has been mentioned, right now, Ohio code allows for a district to have a policy to release students. The bill that's been proposed would change the word in two places from a school district may to a school district shall, so mandating it. And someone mentioned that it's already passed in Indiana, and it wouldn't surprise you that LifeWise is operating nationwide, depending on that state's policy and how they handle it. They're trying to lobby to get it changed at the state level, or they're just going district by district. So Missouri rejected it at the state level, so they're going district by district in Missouri, for example. And so the bill in Ohio wasn't getting anywhere, House Bill 445, because the chair is a former teacher. And so, so Gail Adams, and so a lot of, I think the teachers union spoke with her too. And of course, on the education committee, shout out, we have Beryl Brown Pickle Antonio as a representative, who of course, Gahanna Jefferson is a district that rescinded the policy a couple years ago. So before LifeWise came in. So members of that committee have a lot of information about what it would mean to mandate this in every school. And in the original testimony, if you haven't seen it, Rep. Gary Click basically said, we want to have this policy to make it more efficient for LifeWise to operate in schools. So he wasn't saying that they couldn't do it already, but he wants it to be more efficient. And they didn't really have a good answer for why it has to be during school. And I think that was compelling to the committee as well. But in the meantime, Senator Michelle Reynolds, who chairs the Education Committee on the Senate side, introduced a companion bill with the same words. And she used to be the director of faith-based initiatives for Governor DeWine's office. If you didn't know that, So it's thought that even though sometimes she can be moved on these kind of issues, like, hey, what if you add this to your bill? There's concern in this case, it may not look like that because she's really involved in these faith-based initiatives, and there's a lot of pressure to get this through. One more thing, and I'll go to the toolkit itself, but today and tomorrow in Columbus is at the convention center is the Citizens for Christian Virtue Essential Summit. LifeWise is a sponsor. And, you know, I believe that they're there, you know, wanting to make the case. There's supposedly a lot of state legislators there for why that this policy should pass. And also possibly getting to that character education piece. Someone mentioned that earlier with the character education. LifeWise bills itself as the solution to problems they've identified in school as the attendance problem, behavior problems, and mental health and suicides. They've said this in their Zooms, that this is, and so they present themselves as a solution. Their data can't be backed up. Their data is very questionable, but a lot of people don't go that far. And when you have Husted touring the state, going to chambers of commerce saying this is good for the economy, then it's really hard to, you know, necessarily, we've got our work cut out for us. And so that is why we have the toolkit. And I'm going to pull up really quick. One quick note, Honesty's Coalition is a pretty diverse coalition. And so for that reason, they at first were an interested party and were not opposed to the issue because we have a lot of faith leaders. As we learn more about this particular bill, the coalition switched to oppose. But there isn't like an honesty position statewide of opposing the entire concept. It's taking advantage of it and that sort of thing. So I'm going to pull up here the toolkit, and there are several folks in this room. I'm going to give a shout out who helped create this toolkit, and I will put this in the link after, but just really quick wanted to show you, we have different sections, overview of things we've already talked about, what the bill is, what LifeWise is, what the policy is. And then we have messaging for these different levels, the state house and the school district, and suggested talking points. I'm just gonna scroll down a little bit. And because we know that LifeWise is litigious, we tried to add in the footnotes as many possible links and references as we possibly could to things that are going on and in news articles. So there are a few things that they have tweaked as a result of pushback that schools were making, but we continually update this, so you can look back and we'll be updating some of the messaging as things progress. But we have some templates for submitting testimony, all that sort of thing. And also, I just wanted to throw out, if you don't know if your school has a policy for RTRI, if this is the first time you've heard about it, we also have information on how to find the policy for your district. When we were first doing the working group and meeting with different stakeholders back at the beginning of 2024, people would tell us, oh, my school doesn't have it. My school doesn't have LifeWise, it's not there. And then we would pull up the map that another volunteer and researcher who's been like killing it on this issue, who runs respectpublicschools.com, they went in and looked and they're like, oh my gosh, it's in like 2 schools in my district. I had no idea. So this is just showing you lots of different templates for if you want to send something to press and all the different messaging. And then I wanted to call out, we have an analysis of LifeWise Academy's outcomes report. And so this document, it doesn't go into the deep level. So there were researchers, some professors at one of our state universities who took the study that LifeWise commissioned.
Stu invited us to.
Oh, sorry, what? Oh, okay. So this just goes through some of their claims and why those claims are questionable. If you're an academic, you may want a little more information. you're not necessarily the audience for this. This is for kind of like the lay person to be like, oh, okay, I get that. Like, they're only including 1 year of data in this model, but in this model, they have 3 years of data. But because a lot of the early information was LifeWise was having people cite how they were going to solve all this public school problems with their program. A lot of their information is based on, there are many variables that they did not include. And so this is something that's helpful if your district or your representative is struggling with, well, but they say that it produces these outcomes. There's
Get
actually
something
no
for
data
breakfast.
that says
I
that.
have a couple of peanut butter sandwiches.
We've got some.
Excuse
Okay,
me,
yeah, go ahead.
Kathy, I think,
Kathy Duke.
Kathy, I think you need to mute your mic. Excuse me.
Oh, Kathy Duke?
Yeah,
Yes.
Kathy Duke.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought it was off.
No,
It's
we're hearing you, so please.
still,
I got
think
it.
it's still,
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, go ahead. Natalie, now you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought someone had a question. I was gonna let them. Okay, sorry. So this is the end of the toolkit. I just wanted to give you like a brief idea of what's in it. And then if you would like to, I'll send the link. You can look through it. And we also have sorry, I was like, I was sharing, right? 1 second. I'm gonna go to a different tab here. Hopefully you can see this. I was gonna show you the 445 tab. And my chat is trying to minimize my chat because it's in the way here. All right, 1 second, sorry. The chat moves and always gets me here. Here we go. This is a link that's on Honesty's website that we compiled this based on a lot of feedback from people in our working group and from some school board members, teachers, parents. And there are a few things that LifeWise has sort of answered since this was written. They're claiming that they've tweaked their background check policies. They're still not as strong as what happens in schools. But this is just a list of questions that we gave to folks to equip them if they wanted to ask specific things about the program. And then here are the actions to take related to contacting folks in the State House. We will be updating this going into for post-election and adding some additional information, some additional talking points. But we're going to be working with different folks. And if you want to work with us on this, just let me know. But working with different folks to incorporate their feedback on what, will move their individual State House member. And also, talking to folks who represent, teachers and who represent faith groups to, essentially it's a bill with 2 words changed and it leaves a lot of questions unanswered they want to push this through. So, at a minimum, we need to get our questions answered before a bill like this comes through. In Indiana, they were promoted by the Indiana Family Institute, which is very similar to CCV. They're both part of the state policy network for the people that are the right-wing extremist nerd researchers in this group. So we expect that they're going to be flexing a lot of those muscles as we go into lame duck. And I'm hoping to get some intel from the CCV event on how much, how much this bill came up there. Yes, exactly. I'm just reading the chat there. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to link to both of these things in the chat.
Thank you, Natalie. I'll see if we've got any questions. Anybody raise your hand if you've got a question. Mac, I didn't see a chat in there. I don't know if you put it in there, but I'm not seeing it.
Debbie, it was just a statement that he put in.
Oh, okay. Okay. Did you want us to share it, Mac? Okay, could you share that?
Sure. Max says, I just wanted to expand upon the comment made about Huron City Schools. A letter was sent to the superintendent from a group of pastors from Huron County. They were very concerned about LifeWise taking children out of instructional time in the schools. They also noted that LifeWise instruction would not be allowed within their church buildings.
Yes, thank you. And sorry, I clearly don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing that out because, and you know, they specifically reminded the school district what good partners they were too. I remember from that one. So thank you, Mac. That is a great add to that.
Anybody else have questions?
There's a couple things I wanted to expand on that Natalie talked about earlier. She mentioned the Senate version of the bill. She mentioned Keith too, who runs Respect Public Schools. He talked to the senator, I don't remember what her name is, the one who is in charge of the committee in the Senate with the bill. She has no idea. Like, she doesn't understand RTRI. She doesn't understand the bill. I mean, she was just completely unaware and uneducated about the entire topic. So that's just something I felt I had to mention. And the other thing is, I can show you at least half a dozen references in different legal documents, including one from the Attorney General in Ohio from 1988 that just blatantly says forcing schools to adopt these policies is unconstitutional. So I don't even know how we've gotten to the point of Indiana doing it. Oklahoma did it as well, and now Ohio's trying to do it. I mean, I know how we got there, but we shouldn't be there. I want to share this picture too, if I can, from Indiana, because I think it's a really powerful picture. They like to claim that they're not political, but you can see here, oh, did it work? Can you see the picture?
It says, oh, there we go. Okay.
This is Indiana, right after they changed the law in Indiana. Right there is the LifeWise CEO, the COO. I mean, there's half a dozen LifeWise employees here and state lawmakers who are literally holding LifeWise merchandise, posing in the State House, so proud that they passed this bill. So when they say they're not political or they don't have an agenda, I just love to pull this picture up because they clearly they are.
Thank you.
Yeah, when it was going through Indiana, they everyone called it the LifeWise bill. Exactly. I was just dropping a couple things in the chat, resources for everybody. If anybody, one thing we haven't covered, and I don't know if Reverend Showalter would be one who, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but just for anybody that you know, isn't following this stuff all the time, LifeWise is using curriculum from the Gospel Project, which is part of the Southern Baptist Convention. And so, you know, the Southern Baptist Sunday School Board in like the early 2000s rebranded to Lifeway. So you may have heard of Lifeway Christian Resources, the bookstore and book publisher. And the Gospel Project is a program to essentially explain what they see as the most important components of the gospel over like a cycle from like kindergarten through fifth, that you've hit like all the stories. They had a license, LifeWise has a license where they've adapted that curriculum for kids who've never been exposed to. So rather than what you would get at Sunday school, it's like kids who may not have any reference for this whatsoever. And they don't hide that specifically they're interested in conversion. And that's one of the things that's different because some of the RTRI programs might be like a Catholic CCD program, which is, you know, still like not necessarily, I would say maybe the best use of the limited school hours that we get, but, you know, is like a little bit different because it's targeting their existing like church members or, you know, parish, whatever, versus like the person who doesn't go to church at all. And the Southern Baptist Convention, if you're not aware, has started to take an even harder right turn with some of their policies about women and even predestination in the Bible. They're kind of going in like a more severe direction versus what you might think of as like typical Baptist theology on that. Just seeing the question on LifeWise for elementary school students, they partner, I believe, still with Summit Ministries. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to go all the way up. I don't know if Craig has any more info on that.
I mean, yeah, they go all the way up to 12, and in fact, give credit once they hit high school. They give credit and college credit. So,
and that's in the state code right now that's allowed. That was passed in 2014 to allow for a like a social studies-ish type credit or social science credit. And the way that we've heard that they're able to do it is they're mostly using like Ashland University's like College Credit Plus program, and there's a couple, like Ohio Christian, I think, is one of the others. So they're using like College Credit Plus to get around sort of the like licensing and whether are you certified to teach that topic in a public school. So that's kind of a workaround there.
Were you asking me a question?
Oh, I was just didn't know if they had specifically talked to you about how the middle school and high school and what avenue they're using to teach those.
So what happened in my specific case is the clergy group in town, members of the clergy group had reached out to bring LifeWise in. They have a very supportive superintendent to the idea. My own congregation has actually got members who are very supportive. And so the church took a vote, because it's their authority, not mine, that said, oh, well, this sounds like a wonderful idea. Let's go on ahead and let this happen. And we've got a couple of people who volunteer to be teachers. I was going to sign up to be on the steering board that's just to have a voice of diversity. But after I filled out all the application online, I got to the very last item, and the very last item says you must agree to their statement of faith. And I cannot agree to their statement of faith. And I've told anybody and everybody, the clergy I've been working with, my congregation, exactly why. And it's like, I don't object to the idea of trying to offer something for religious education, because that's my business. That's what I'm promoting. But the whole idea of this organization and its alliance with Christian nationalism, that is a very big concern. And I also have come to understand the difficulties and division that happens by taking a group of students out and the peer pressure that comes, and then who is left, who's not participating. All right, so that's where I am. They are launching based on how much money and resources they have. So they've got enough resources to do 4th and 5th grade. And as they are able, they will work actually toward the younger. And then as more resources are available in the local community, they will go the full range of ages that are possible, so long as the individual schools are able to accommodate. And they are doing it over lunchtime. Now, one of the hiccups they came up with is the school agreed to package lunches so that they could grab a lunch and go on over. And it's actually the church that's hosting them, there are 2 churches that are hosting them, are across the street from the school. So they'll walk, or they may actually still bus them. It's just enough distance. But the hiccup they found out was, if you are offering free lunches, the state regulates that free lunches given at school may not be taken off school property. So they've had to work around that by getting volunteers. You're muted, Natalie.
That
Um,
whole thing is still a debate. The USDA and the state of Ohio are going back and forth with the lunch thing. It seems like the state wants to allow it and is going to reimburse, even though the USDA initially said no, it needs to be a school sanctioned program. The state of
Mhm.
Ohio is just saying, yeah, it's a school sanctioned program.
and we're not,
I was also curious, when did you fill out your steering committee application? Was it a while ago? Probably not in the last month, I'm guessing.
Not in the last month. It was, this was happening in the spring. Spring
The
into
reason
summer.
I ask is
Spring.
because they updated it just in the last month or two, and they added another page to it that I will try to link here. You'll probably want to look at it. It's pretty interesting. I'm going to find that and link it in the chat for you, though.
Okay.
You may want to show it to your congregation because it's a new form that all the employees must sign that's
Oh.
agreeing to extra things beyond their statement of faith. So I'm going to pull
Yeah, I'm
that
not
up here.
surprised at all.
Yeah, it's
Um,
terrible.
And I'm waiting for my own church members who have volunteered to go through that process and see where they are and feeling comfortable signing it. I've got one person who doesn't agree with the statement of faith, but is so convinced that bringing a religious education to the public school students is so important that they're not going to worry about not going to quibble over that, so.
so,
Okay.
it might have been from your finding, in Granville, but, just to echo on what Zach said, when the packable school lunch program, when that question came up, and it was, a lot of research that Keith did as well, it was brought up to the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. Magically, right after Westerville brought it up in their meeting, that they were like, well, what are we going to do about these lunches that are supposed to be reimbursed? The language on the Ohio Department of Education's website updated to say that they would be reimbursed. And then when Honesty for Ohio Education inquired about who was reimbursing it, they added an extra word to say federally reimbursed. And I have spoken to, not just me, but we, a few legal, experts on this, and they think that that's problematic, but not something that, given the current makeup of Ohio and US courts, is something that we want to go there. But it might still be something that's interesting to bring up in your district. One other thing I wanted to say was when I brought this issue up on a call with some folks from Columbus City Schools, the reaction, I'm just telling you this, sir, in case this is something that comes up in your local community, the reaction was, I'm sorry, you're telling me that you want to take money away from a school with limited resources just because you're mad they're packing a lunch for a religious program, right? So you've got the whole gamut, and it goes back to how different our school districts are. That, no, I don't know anyone who's trying to take money from schools or take lunches from kids, but it's interesting that DO has now decided that RTRI is apparently a state sanctioned program, essentially, based on the language.
Natalie, I do want to clarify one little thing. While I am working here in Granville, the school district I am talking about is not Granville. I have not named it in this meeting, but that's okay.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay.
No,
Sorry.
that's
Thank you
okay.
for clarifying.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
But yeah, we didn't get to that, talked about that with Westerville, but that was, if, for those of you who don't know, they brought up first just like some legal wrangles, and it bought them a little bit of time.
Danielle has her hand up. Danielle, can you?
Yes,
unmute?
I do want to add to, I'm sorry, I don't remember the pastor's name, but I do want to add that maybe you might want to make your congregation aware and the steering committee members aware that LifeWise is constantly dipping their hand in the collection basket. And they not only grift the community, they take resources from the school, but they also take resources from the churches that they're in and ask to have the space for free. They ask to mount things and paint everything without having to pay to do that or rent the space if they can get away with it. And they're constantly going to be asking for fundraisers, and that's going to be taking away from the church's own money that they can, raise, because everybody wants to support the LifeWise in the community once they start getting it going. If you have a supportive community.
Danielle, I'm very aware of that. And sometimes a sheep really wants to be fleeced. These are folks that I started with that argument, actually. And they're like, well, we're gonna go out of our way to make sure this is a successful program. Thank you very much. So, but you're right. It will take everything it can. And that really is kind of the nature of a volunteer church organization. People are kind of geared toward that. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have a question or comment? Chris.
Sorry, I just had a question because I'm new to a lot of this information. Where do they take these students to when they pull up with a bus to the school?
Well,
I mean, I guess I thought it was some kind of a church, but we're saying it's not a church, it's just a program. So where do they take the kids?
Can be a church. I don't know how often it is, but in the community I've been talking about, there are 2 churches that have said our facility is open. We want to support this program.
Okay.
They are close enough proximity to be logistically a good space for this to happen for them. So that's how that goes.
Usually they start out in a church, but we've seen them renting buildings in one district. They actually rent a building from the school on school property in one district. But the goal is they go and buy their own property, their own building, or have the property donated to them. Ideally, they don't want to have to buy it, of course. Yeah. But when they hit that stage, the local chapter has to set up their own 501c3. So they really just trickle down. It's really a pyramid scheme, just full of NPOs and religion. The business model, when you look at the business model, it just mimics what any of the pyramid schemes, MLMs, they all look the same. But this is just tied in with NPOs at a local level.
Thank you. I think before we get to Danielle, I think Anna had her hand up, but I don't see her. Anna, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here. Zach pretty much covered what I was going to say. I think the only thing I have to add to the comment about the 501c3s. So if a LifeWise program at the local level wants to purchase a property or build a purpose-built LifeWise building, they do have to set up their own 501c3 and they have to name it. They cannot include LifeWise in the name. They have to name it blank character academy or, something kind of generic. But their money does trickle up to the LifeWise nonprofit.
Thank you. Danielle.
I also think that sometimes they launch these full well knowing they're not going to float in some communities, especially where there's not local support, but there's a lot of communities around it that want to try to push it into another community. And I think the reason is because if it doesn't float, all of those resources get back up into the larger NPO. They take anything that's donated, the money, the items, the books that were already paid for, and those books have to go back to the bigger LifeWise so they can resell them to another program.
Thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question? Okay, let me just make sure.
I guess just to elaborate a little bit on what Danielle just said, even if the program works out, like they say that you're providing for the students in your local community, every single supply is bought from LifeWise corporate. So even the money that you think is going back into your local program is still getting funneled up, even when it's a successful program.
Wow.
Yeah.
Danielle, I don't know if you had your hand up again or if you have another comment.
Oh, sorry, I did not. But I will say they find every single way to make this like an MLM. It is an EOS organized company per se, like that. It's basically an MLM. And so like he just said, they find every way to monetize so that that money can go up.
Wow. I think Sue Miller has her hand up.
Yes, but I don't know how much longer this meeting is going to last, but I just want to say something about Zachary. The LifeWise is coming after him hard, and he has put his heart and soul into this. There's been sleepless nights. There's an incredible amount of pressure and stress on him. He's a single dad. I just want everybody to know that the momentum we have with LifeWise now, or with RTRI, is 100% started by the sacrifices of Zachary Parrish. So I think I just want everybody to know that, and I just want to encourage everyone, you know, to support him in this lawsuit. I don't.
Shut up, Susan.
I'm sorry.
It's not
I'm
me. I'm just
sorry.
the guy up front. Like, it's not. It has taken a whole community. I'm not 100% responsible for anything. I'm just a big angry man who's been yelling. And yeah, they're definitely coming after me. That part's true. They're coming after me hard, but to say
Yep.
it's 100% me, it's not. It takes the whole
No,
community. It takes locals, and you know, people have said a whole lot of things that make me real uncomfortable. Really, I'm just out here yelling about a problem. That's all it is.
Well, I think we've all experienced this, being part of a group, and there are face people and there are supporter people. But one thing we do know is that we can all be the supporter people, and Zach does need the support. And so their follow-up for this Zoom meeting will show you ways that you can be direct support. But it's not just for Zach. I understand it's for the whole. He's doing a lot of this stuff on behalf of the rest of us, and then he's brought us into the fold. And there are many of us that are just finding out about this, and we're grateful for Honesty for Ohio Education for also bringing it to the fore. So it takes all of us, and but we do very much thank Zach for his initiative in getting the ball rolling. Is extremely important, and to keeping it rolling. So we've got some clapping here. Anybody else have a comment before we wrap up? Patty.
I just wanted to ask Zach if LifeWise is out of his school district. Where I don't know if I missed that, but is LifeWise still in your school district where your daughter was going, or?
I started in Defiance. I was there for a year and a half. We changed schools. We're in Fort Wayne now. They're not here yet, but they are definitely on their way. They're coming. Yeah. Fort Wayne was probably the main reason Indiana was one of the first targets to get the law changed, because Fort Wayne is one of the biggest schools in the state, and they adamantly told LifeWise no. And LifeWise said, hold my beer, you know? So, yeah.
That's good to know. And Reverend Showalter, is there anything else that you'd like us to be aware of, or when we interact with faith communities that we might be wanting to speak with about this?
Well, it's interesting. I've been trying to talk with other faith communities. We've certainly got what are known as the mainline churches that are, for the most part, not supportive of LifeWise. And you've got churches that are blended politically in terms of their perspectives. And I am trying to walk a very fine line here as someone who's very concerned about this organization, but also living, you know, with folks who are very supportive of what it's the idealized goal of what it's trying to do on the surface with the local children. So that's it. I'm here just to learn and to help, but I am straddling both dimensions, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I'm curious as to whether the argument of separation of church and state is made in reference to LifeWise.
It is, and how they address it, and how my congregation has accepted it, is the fact that no, quote unquote, No school resources are being used for this. It is all, it's separately funded, nothing, no funds from the school, no use of the school, etc. And that's how they clarify it for us about the separation of church and state. One of the other things that kind of helps their argument is when churches are trying to offer opportunities for children to have programs at the school, at the churches, like Sunday mornings or weekends or whatever, we are competing constantly with sports programs and other extracurricular things that the schools are offering. So in another way, the schools have helped to create this problem that if churches do not have other avenues for saying, inviting the children in because they're signed up for everything else that the school offers, this ends up being a legitimized alternative for churches to come in and say, okay, we want to provide a religious experience for children, and how else can we do it? So there's that side of it.
That's a good point. I'm wondering if say 445 is passed, so the language goes from may to shall, could that be considered a violation of church and state? When you're
Well, if you're based on the school release permission, the whole idea that the school will allow an opportunity that does not impact the core curriculum or educational experience, to allow students to go off school property, to not use school resources for other programs, then that is separating school from church, from state. I've also suggested to larger community, to other churches, I'm not in the community that's got the support for it, but the possibility for a large community, if somebody wanted to offer an alternative program to LifeWise that says we are inclusive, we are, progressive, that launch it and compete with LifeWise on their own terms. But I don't know that that's quite the focus here in this group. So, but it's just another alternative, and I don't know that anybody out there is going to take up on it.
That occurred to me, and I wondered if let's say a group, a religious group that was not in favor, in general favor, a more minority group tried to get the same benefits as LifeWise seems to be having, that how they would be treated. It just sort of makes you wonder.
Well, here's the thing. If a school district is already offering it to LifeWise, they have zero grounds to deny another competing organization to offer the same kind of program with a different message.
Yes.
Now, LifeWise big advantage, as already mentioned, is it is a powerhouse. It has large funding. It already has the legal infrastructure. It has the staffing infrastructure. It has the curriculum infrastructure. It is a monolith to have to offer a competing program to, because there are things you have to worry about if you are hiring staff, because they pay for staff. And if you're trying to move children from one place to another, you've got to have insurance to make sure for liability. I mean, there's a lot of administrative stuff that goes with that. And that's my other hat, is I'm a church administrator.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Danielle has her hand up.
I'd like to respond to that, Pastor. It kind of defeats the argument that we're trying to make to set up another program. This is something I've thought about. I wanted to do like a STEM character ed thing, but also one of the problems with LifeWise is the resources that it takes from the schools. So it's kind of counter to the argument to have, say, another organization come in like, the Satanists or whatever, to take the kids out, or to even create our own organization. And yes, that takes resources. But also, LifeWise is taking resources from the school in that the school has to organize them. They're not, LifeWise isn't dealing with disciplinary issues. They're throwing their disciplinary issues onto the school. They're not contacting the parents when something happens. They're not dealing with like first aid things. They're taking like medical aids or like state aids from schools in many of these places, in my school in particular, to LifeWise, and then leaving the school without aids because they're needed with the kids at LifeWise because the majority of the school is, you know, going out there. And so if there's an emergency at the school where one of the students needs an aid, they don't have them. That's been an issue already. I've seen where nurses were being sent out there. Well, if you only have one school nurse and they're being sent out to LifeWise, what happens if there's an emergency at the school? There's a lot that goes wrong with it in the resources that they take up. Not, you know, on top of that, the lunches, and on top of that, you know, all of the little things that aren't immediately obvious that LifeWise taps into in time and resources that the school has that they don't want to throw their money at trying to double for themselves, because that's what they should be doing. If they want to be able to accommodate kids with disabilities, they should be throwing money at having an aide there and available, or a nurse there and available if something needs managed there.
Okay.
If that makes
Danielle,
sense.
thank you. I'm not really aware of, you know, on the ground, once the program is running, the one in the community I'm working in there is really just starting. So this is, you know, the spiel is we use no school resources. But you're right. And one of the other
Right,
questions,
it's not obvious to anybody when they start this program.
no, it probably, I wouldn't expect it would. And one of the questions, because the new director is also, in this particular case, a school teacher, trained as a school teacher, in part of soliciting to make sure that all the churches are on board with the program and are going to support it, interviews each of the clergy as part of their networking, and, you know, to get buy-in and to ask if there are any concerns. And one of my concerns is, what if a student comes to the program and at some point in that has a question about their sexual orientation? What happens to a student that otherwise, in their theological perspective and framework, would be considered, you know, to be demonized or to be steered in a way that would be uncomfortable with my understanding of how to deal with that? Her answer is, oh, we would just send that person back to the guidance counselor at the school. So you're right. There are some problems they're not going to handle. And quite frankly, that specific scenario, I would not want them to handle. Yeah, so in that sense,
I
yeah.
agree with that one, definitely. That I really don't want them to handle it, because the way that looks like they are set up to handle it could be very harmful.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I see a question to me about other franchise versions. Again, I am talking on a theoretical sense of somebody who has really only recently learned about this organization and trying to do a deeper dive. It's like, well, if we want to compete with them, that's a way. I didn't think about just challenging RTRI. That makes even more sense. But does it also negatively impact potentially other organizations that could benefit from RTRI that we would be supportive of? It seems like maybe that is the best way to deal with the present evil in hand.
I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Pastor Showalter, that was my question. I guess what my line of thinking was, if there are sort of, I would say, copycat LifeWises that crop up, and they could be any faith based program, but if school districts, you know, they can't discern based on faith, of course, if they have this RTRI policy. So if you have multiple franchise, big organizations, copycat of LifeWise, pulling a bunch of students out all the time, like going different places, like schools still need to keep track of those students coming and going. And if, you know, if it could be an unlimited number of organizations
It
in
could
any
become-
given district. Like that
Which
could dismantle
sure
the
become-
day.
It sure could become very unwieldy. Now, realize that there has been a similar kind of problem, a parallel situation, and it's a little older scenario, is when schools offered rental space on school property for organizations, that they would, if they were to approve an outside organization and just say, we have a blanket policy, that they were forced to have a blanket policy that if they offered space on school grounds to outside organizations, they could not limit who they would allow to come in. And so school boards were confronted with, oh my gosh, what happens when the Klan comes, or other organizations that will be completely antithetical to what the school stands for. Not quite sure how the schools fully resolve that. I think most of them just stopped letting any group in, and that solved the problem. But it hurt some of the groups that would have been beneficial to the school, but that was how to keep the school safe. So similarly, to say, okay, let's get rid of RTRI, don't let any group take students out during the school day, may be the best route.
Thank you. Let's just have a little bit of follow-up, last thoughts from Zach and then from Natalie. And I do want to thank them before people start leaving for a really, really good explanation of all of this. It's been really eye-opening, and thanks for all the additional folks that don't normally join us, but who had so much to offer. I do appreciate it. Zach, you want to do the first follow-up? I think he's still
I
there.
think we pretty much, we covered the gist of it. I could go on for 4 more hours if you wanted me to, but yeah, I think we covered most of it. So
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And Natalie.
I just thank you everyone for your time. Just a shout out to a lot of people who are on this call for their input in the Honesty Toolkit. I just got word during this meeting that the Ohio legislature has officially set November 13th for their next session to start, and committee hearings could start the 11th. So just put that on your calendars, and we will be specifically organizing around this at the state level if you are interested in joining us. And just one other point, I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but on the separation of church and state, so my background is I did PR for 20 years. What we have sort of been guided, and what makes sense also a little bit just personally, things that seem like they probably violate the Establishment Clause may not get us there legally, but if but like it pulls at the heartstrings of what you believe as an American is the Establishment Clause. And so in that sense, it's a good argument because it seems counter to what you believe we're all about. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. And we'll be following up with a video and also with additional information from the chat, all the links, and also a link to the GoFundMe page to try to help with Zach's lawsuit. So appreciate it again, everybody. Thank you for coming. Take care. And thank you especially for Zach and Natalie.
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Nice to meet all of you. Oh, and happy Shana Tova for anyone celebrating on this call. So
thank you.
Thank you for giving us the space to communicate with you about this.
Oh, it's been great. So glad you could come. This is wonderful. Okay, I'm going to wait on till Mike gets the recording done and then saves the chat, and then we'll be ready to go.